Hello everyone, welcome back to the Acolyte Podcast. Last time we had a reading of the Iliad Book I, and we got a very nice opening personification of these gods and goddesses and the characters involved within this story. Today we are going to be reading Book II and hopefully get into a little bit of action. With that, let us begin. Zeus, keeping his promise, tricks Agamemnon with a false dream into imagining he can conquer Troy at once. Agamemnon craftfully tests the spirit of his men by telling them that Zeus has bidden him give up the siege. Athena, sent by Hera, inspires Odysseus to oppose the plan, and with Nestor, he incites the host to continue the struggle. Both armies muster for battle, and their chiefs and forces are counted. Now the other gods and the armed warriors of the plain slept soundly, but Zeus was wakeful, for he was thinking how to do honor to Achilles and destroy much people at the ships of the Achaeans. In the end, he deemed it would be best to send a lying dream to King Agamemnon. So he called one to him and said to it, "Lying dream, go to the ships of the Achaeans, into the tent of Agamemnon, and say to him, word for word, as I now bid you. Tell him to get the Achaeans instantly under arms, for he shall take Troy. There are no longer divided counsels among the gods. Hera has brought them to her own mind, and woe betides the Trojans." The dream went when it had heard its message, and soon reached the ships of the Achaeans. It sought Agamemnon, son of Atreus, and found him in his tent, wrapped in a profound slumber. It hovered over his head in the likeness of Nestor, son of Neleus, whom Agamemnon honored above all his counselors, and said, "You are sleeping, son of Atreus. One who has the welfare of his host and so much other care upon his shoulders should dock his ship. Hear me at once, for I come as a messenger from Zeus, who, though he be not near, yet takes thought for you and pities you. He bids you get the Achaeans instantly under arms, for you shall take Troy. There are no longer divided counsels among the gods. Hera has brought them over to her own mind, and woe betides the Trojans at the hands of Zeus. Remember this, and when you wake, see that it does not escape you." The dream then left him, and he thought of the things that were surely not to be accomplished. He thought that on that same day he was to take the city of Priam, but he little knew what was in the mind of Zeus, who had many other hard-fought fights in store, alike for Danaans and Trojans. Then presently he woke, with the divine message still ringing in his ears. So he sat upright and put on his soft shirt so fair and new, and over this his heavy cloak. He bound his sandals onto his comely feet, and slung his silver-studded sword about his shoulders. Then he took the imperishable staff of his father and sailed forth to the ships of the Achaeans. The goddess Dawn now wended her way to vast Olympus, that she might herald day to Zeus and to the other immortals, and Agamemnon sent the critters round to call the people in assembly. So they called them, and the people gathered thereon. But first he summoned a meeting of the elders at the ship of Nestor, king of Pylos, and when they were assembled, he laid a cunning counsel before them. "My friends," he said, "I have a dream from heaven in the dead of night, and its face and figures resembled none but Nestor's. It hovered over my head and said, "You are sleeping, son of Atreus. One who has the welfare of his host and so much other care upon his shoulders should dock his ship. Hear me at once, for I am a messenger from Zeus, who, though he be not near, yet takes thought for you and pities you. He bids you get the Achaeans instantly under arms, for you shall take Troy. There are no longer divided counsels among the gods. Hera has brought them over to her own mind, and woe betides the Trojans at the hands of Zeus. Remember this." The dream then vanished and I awoke. Let us now, therefore, arm the sons of the Achaeans. But it will be well that I should first sound them, and to this end I will tell them to fly with their ships. But do you others go about among the host and prevent their doing so." He then sat down, and Nestor, the prince of Pylos, with all serenity and goodwill addressed them thus. "My friends," said he, "princes and counselors of the Argives, if any other man of the Achaeans had told us of this dream, we should have declared it false and would have had nothing to do with it. But he who has seen it is the foremost man among us. We must therefore set about getting the people under arms." With this, he led the way from the assembly, and the other spectred kings rose with him in obedience to the word of Agamemnon. But the people pressed forward to hear. They swarmed like bees that sally from some hollow cave, and flit in countless throng among the spring flowers, bunched in knots and clusters. Even so did the mighty multitude pour from ships and tents to the assembly, and ring themselves upon the wide-watered shore, while among them rang wildfire rumor, messenger of Zeus, urging them to ever for. Thus they gathered in a pell-mell of mad confusion, and the earth groaned under the tramp of men as the people sought their places. 9 heralds went crying about among them to say their tumult and bid them listen to the kings, till at last they were got into their several places and ceased their clamor. Then King Agamemnon rose, holding his scepter. This was the work of Hephaestus, who gave it to Zeus, the son of Cronos. Zeus gave it to Hermes, slave of Argus, guide and guardian. King Hermes gave it to Pelops, the mighty charioteer, and Pelops to Atreus, shepherd of his people. Atreus, when he died, left it to Thyestes, rich in flocks, and Thyestes in his turn left it to be borne by Agamemnon, that he might be lord of all Argos and of the isles. Leaning then on his scepter, he addressed the Argives. "My friends," he said, "heroes, servants of Ares, the hand of heaven has been laid heavenly upon me. Cruel Zeus gave me his solemn promise that I shall sack the city of Priam before return. But he has played me false, and is now bidding me go ingloriously back to Argos with the loss of much people. Such is the will of Zeus, who has laid many a proud city in the dust, as he will yet lay others, by his power is above all. It will be a sorry tale hereafter, that an Achaean host, at once so great and valiant, battled in vain against men fewer in number than themselves, but as yet the end is not in sight. Think that the Achaeans and Trojans have sworn to a solemn covenant, and that they have each been numbered, the Trojans by the roll of their householders, and we by companies of 10. Think further that each of our companies desire to have a Trojan householder to pour out their wine. We are so greatly more in number that full many a company would have to go without its cupbearer. But they have in the town many allies from other places, and it is these that hinder me from being able to sack the rich city of Ilium. 9 of Zeus's years are gone. The timbers of our ships have rotted. Their tackling is sound no longer. Our wives and little ones at home look anxiously for our coming. But the work that we come hither to do has not been done. Now, therefore, let us all do as I say. Let us sail back to our own land, for we shall not take Troy." With these words, he moved the hearts of the multitude, so many of them as knew not the cunning counsel of Agamemnon. They surged to and fro like the waves of the Icarian Sea when the east and south winds break from heaven clouds to lash them, or as when the west wind sweeps over a field of corn and the ears bow beneath the blast. Even so were they swayed as they flew, with loud cries towards the ships, and the dust from under their feet rose heavenward. They cheered each other on to draw the ships into sea. They cleared the channels in front of them. They began taking away the stays from underneath them, and the welkin rang with their glad cries, so eager were they to return. Then surely the Argives would have returned after a fashion that was not fated. But Hera said to Athena, "Alas, daughter of Aegis-bearing Zeus, unwearingable, shall the Argives fly home to their own land over the broad sea, and leave Priam and the Trojans the glory of still keeping Helen? For whose sake so many of the Achaeans have died at Troy, far from their home? Go about at once among the host, and speak fairly to them, man by man, that they draw not their ships into the sea." Athena was not slack to do her bidding. Down she darted from the topmost summits of Olympus, and in a moment she was at the ships of the Achaeans. There she found Odysseus, peer of Zeus in council, standing alone. He had not as yet laid a hand upon his ship, for he was grieved and sorry. So she went close up to him and said, "Odysseus, noble son of Laertes, are you going to fling yourself into your ships and be off home to your own land in this way? Will you leave Priam and the Trojans the glory of still keeping Helen, for whose sake so many of the Achaeans have died at Troy, far from their homes? Go about at once among the host, and speak fairly to them man by man, that they draw not their ships into the sea." Odysseus knew the voice as that of the goddess. He flung his cloak from him and set off to run. His servant, Eurybates, a man of Ithaca, who waited on him, took charge of the cloak, whereon Odysseus went straight up to Agamemnon and received from him his ancestral perishable staff. With this he went about among the ships of the Achaeans. Whenever he met a king or chieftain, he stood by him and spoke to him fairly. "Sir," he said, "this flight is cowardly and unworthy. Stand to your post, and bid your people also keep their places. You do not yet know the full mind of Agamemnon, he who sounded us, and here long will visit the Achaeans with his displeasure. We were not all of us at the council to hear what he then said. See to it, lest he be angry and do us a mischief, for the pride of kings is great, and the hand of Zeus is with them." But when he came across any common man who was making a noise, he struck him with his staff and rebuked him, saying, "Sirrah, hold your peace and listen to better man than yourself. You are a coward and no soldier. You are nobody either to fight or counsel. We cannot all be kings. It is not well that there should be many masters. One man must be supreme, one king to whom the sons of scheming Kronos has given the scepter of sovereignty over us all." Thus masterfully did he go about among the host, and the people hurried back to the council from their tents and ships with a sound as the thunder of surf when it comes crashing down upon the shore, and all the sea is in an uproar. The rest now took their seats and kept to their own several places, but Thersites still went on waging his unbridled tongue, a man of many words, and those unseemly, a monger of sedition, a railer against all who were in authority, who cared not what he said, so that he might set the Achaeans in a laugh. He was the ugliest man of all those that came before Troy, bandy-legged, lame of one foot, with his 2 shoulders rounded and hunched over his chest. His head ran up to a point, but there was little hair on the top of it. Achilles and Odysseus hated him worst of all, for it was with them that he was most wont to wrangle. Now, however, with a shrill, squeaking voice, he began heaping his abuse on Agamemnon. The Achaeans were angry and disgusted, yet nonetheless he kept on brawling and bawling at the son of Atreus. "Agamemnon," he cried, "what ails you now? What more do you want? Your tents are filled with bronze and with fair women. For whenever we take a town, we give you the pick of them. Would you have yet more gold, which some Trojan is to give you as a ransom for his son, when I or another Achaean has taken him prisoner? Or is it some young girl to hide away and lie with? It is not well that you, the ruler of the Achaeans, should bring them into such misery. Weakling cowards, women rather than men, let us sail home, and leave this fellow here at Troy to stew in his own meeds of honor and discover whether we were of any service to him or no. Achilles is a much better man than he is, and see how he has treated him, robbing him of his prize and keeping it himself. Achilles takes it meekly and shows no fight. If he did, son of Atreus, you would never again insult him." Thus railed Thersites, but Odysseus at once went up to him and rebuked him sternly. "Check your glide tongue, Thersites," he said, "and babble not a word further. Chide not witch princes when you have none to back you. There is no viler creature come before Troy than the son of Atreus. Drop this chatter about kings, and neither revile them nor keep harping about going home. We do not yet know how things are going to be, nor whether the Achaeans are to return with good success or evil. How dare you gibe Agamemnon because the Danaans have awarded him so many prizes? I tell you, therefore, and it shall surely be, that if I again catch you talking such nonsense, I will either forfeit my own head, or be no more called father of Telemachus, or I will take you, strip you stark naked, and wipe you out of the assembly till you are blubbering about back to the ships." On this he beat him with his staff about the back and shoulders till he dropped and fell a-weeping. The golden scepter raised a bloody wheal on his back, so he sat down frightened and in pain, looking foolish as he wiped the tears from his face. The people were sorry for him, yet they laughed heartily, and one would turn to his neighbor saying, "Odysseus has done many a good thing here now in fight and council, but he never did the Argives a better turn than when he stopped this fellow's mouth from prating further. He will give the kings no more of his insolence." Thus said the people. Then Odysseus rose, scepter in hand, and Athena in the likeness of a herald bade the people be still, that those who were far off might hear him and consider his counsel. He therefore with all serenity and good will addressed them thus: "King Agamemnon, the Achaeans are far from making you a byword among all mankind. They forget the promise they made you when they set out from Argos, that you should not return till you have sacked the town of Troy. And like children or widowed women, they murmur, and they would set off homeward. True it is that we have had toil enough to be disheartened. A man chafes at having to stay away from his wife, even for a single month, when he is on shipboard at the mercy of wind and sea. But it is now 9 long years that we have been kept here. I cannot, therefore, blame the Achaeans if they turn restive. Still, we shall be shamed if we go home empty after so long a stay. Therefore, my friends, be patient yet a little longer, that we may learn whether the prophecies of Calchas were false or true. All have not since perished must remember as though it were yesterday or the day before, how the ships of the Achaeans were detained in Iliad when we were on our way hither to make our war on Priam and the Trojans. We were ranged round about a fountain offering hecatombs to the gods upon their holy altars, and there was a fine plane tree from beneath which there welled a stream of pure water. Then we saw the prodigy, for Zeus sent a fearful serpent out of the ground, with blood-red stains upon its backs, and it darted from under the altar on the plane tree. Now there was a brood of young sparrows, quite small, upon the topmost bough, peeping out from under the leaves, 8 in all, and their mother had hatched them. That made 9. The serpent ate the poor cheeping things, while the old bird flew about lamenting her little ones. But the serpent threw his coils around her and caught her by the wing as she was screaming. Then, when he had eaten both the sparrow and her young, the god who had sent him made him become a sign, for the son of scheming Cronos turned him into stone. And we stood there, wondering at that which had come to pass, seeing then that such a fearful portent had broken in upon our hectocomb. Calchas forthwith declared to us the oracles of heaven. "Why, Achaeans," he said, "are you thus speechless? Zeus has sent us this sign, long in coming, and long here to be fulfilled, though his fame shall last forever. As the serpent ate the 8 fledglings and the sparrow that hatched them, which makes 9, so shall we fight 9 years at Troy, but in the 10th shall we take the town." This was what he said, and now it is all coming true. Stay here, therefore, all of you. We will take the city of Priam. On this the Argives raised a shout till the ship rang again with uproar. Nestor, knight of the Garin, then addressed them. "Shame on you," he cried, "to stay talking here like children when you should fight like men. Where are our covenants now, and where the oaths that we have taken? Shall our counsels be flung into the fire, with our drink offerings in the right hands of fellowship wherein we have put our trust? We waste our time in words, and for all our talking here shall be no further forward. Stand, therefore, son of Atreus, by your own steadfast purpose. Lead the Argives on to battle, and leave this handful of men to rot, who scheme and scheme in vain, to get back to Argus ere they have learned whether Zeus be true or liar. For the might of the son of Cronos surely promised that we should succeed, when we were Argives, set sail to bring death and destruction upon the Trojans. He showed us favorable signs, by fashioning his lightning on our right hands. Therefore, let none take haste to go, till he has first lain with the wife of some Trojan, and avenged the toil and sorrow that he has suffered for the sake of Helen. Nevertheless, if any man is in such haste to be back home again, let him lay his hand to this ship, that he may meet his doom in the sight of all. But, O king, consider and give ear to my counsel, for the word that I say may not be neglected lightly. Divide your men, Agamemnon, into their several tribes and clans, that clans and tribes may stand by and help one another. If you do this, and if the Achaeans obey you, you will find out who in both chief and people are brave, and who are cowards, for they will vie one against the other. Thus you shall also learn whether it is through the counsel of heaven or the cowardice of man that you shall fail to take this town." And Agamemnon answered, "Nestor, you have again outdone the sons of the Achaeans in counsel. Would by Father Zeus, Athena, and Apollo that I among them 10 more such counselors, for the city of King Priam would then soon fall beneath our hands, and we should sack it. But the son of Cronos afflicts me with boodles, wrangling, and strife. Achilles and I are quarreling about this girl, in which matter I was the first to offend. If we can be of one mind again, the Trojans will not stave off destruction for a day. Now, therefore, get your morning meal, that our hosts may join in fight. Whet well your spears. See well to the ordering of your shields. Give good feed to your horses, and let your chariots carefully over, that we may be ready to do battle the livelong day. For we shall have no rest, not for a moment, till night falls to part us. The bands that bear your shields shall be wet with the sweat upon your shoulders. Your hands shall weary upon your spears. Your horses shall steam in front of your chariots. And if I see any man shirking the fight, or trying to keep out of it at the ships, there will be no help for him, but he shall be a prey to dogs and vultures. Thus he spoke, and the Achaeans roared in applause, as when the waves run high before the blasts of the south wind, and break on some lofty headland, dashing against it and buffeting it without ceasing, as the storms from every quarter drive them. Even so did the Achaeans rise and hurry in all directions to their ships. There they lighted their fires at their tents, and got dinner, offering sacrifice, every man to one or other of the gods, and praying each one of them that he might live to come out of the fight. Agamemnon, king of men, sacrificed a fat 5-year-old bull to the mighty son of Cronos, and invited the princes and elders of his host. First he asked Nestor and King Idomeneus, then 2 Ajaxes, and the son of Tydeus, and sixthly Odysseus, peer of the gods and council. But Menelaus came of his own accord, for he knew how busy his brother then was. They stood round the bull with the barley meal in their hands, and Agamemnon prayed, saying, Zeus, most glorious, supreme, that dwellest in heaven, and ridest upon the storm cloud, grant that the sun may not go down, nor the night fall, till the palace of Priam is laid low, and its gates are consumed with fire. Grant that my sword may pierce the shirt of Hector about his heart, and that full many of his comrades may bite the dust as they fall dying around him. Thus he prayed, but the son of Cronos would not fulfill his prayer. He accepted the sacrifice, yet nonetheless increased their toil continually. When they had done praying and sprinkled the barley meal upon the victim, they drew back its head, killed it, and then flayed it. They cut out the thigh bones, wrapped them round in 2 layers of fat, and set pieces of raw meat on the top of them. Then they burned upon the split logs of firewood, but they spitted the innards meats, and held them in the flames to cook. Then the thigh bones were burned, and they had tasted the inward meats. They cut the rest up small, put the pieces upon spits, roasted them till they were done, and drew them off. Then, when they had finished their work, and the feast was ready, they ate it, and every man had his full share, so that all were satisfied. As soon as they had enough to eat and drink, Nestor, knight of Geryon, began to speak. King Agamemnon, he said, let us not stay talking here, nor be slack in the work that heaven has put into our hands. Let the heralds summon the people to gather at their several ships. We will then go about amongst the host, that we may begin fighting at once. Thus did he speak, and Agamemnon heeded his words. He at once set the criers round to call the people in assembly. So they called them, and the people gathered thereon. The chiefs about the son of Atreus chose their men and marshaled them, while Athena went among them, holding her priceless Agus that knows neither age nor death. From it there waved 100 tassels of pure gold, all deftly woven, and each one of them worth 100 oxen. With this she darted furiously everywhere among the host of the Achaeans, urging them forward and putting courage into the hearts of each, so that he might fight and do battle without ceasing. Thus war became sweeter in their eyes, even than returning home to their ships. As when some great forest fire is raging upon a mountain top, and its light is seen afar, even so as they marched, the gleam of their armor flashed up into the firmament of heaven. They were like great flocks of geese, or cranes, or swans, on the plain about the waters of Cayster, that wings their way hither and thither, glorying in the pride of flight, and crying as they settle till the fen is alive with their screaming. Even thus did their tribes pour from ships and tents onto the plain of the Scamander, and the ground rang as brass under the feet of men and horses. They stood as thick upon the flower-bespangled field as leaves that bloom in summer. As countless swarms of flies buzz around a herdsman's homestead in the time of spring when the pails are drenched with milk, even so did the Achaeans swarm on the plain to charge the Trojans and destroy them. The chiefs disposed their men this way and that before the fight began, drafting them out as easily as goatherds draft their flocks when they have got mixed while feeding. And among them went King Agamemnon, with a head and a face like Zeus, the lord of thunder, a waist like Ares, and a chest like that of Poseidon. As soon as the great bull that lords it over the herds upon the plain, even so did Zeus make the son of Atreus stand peerless among the multitudes of heroes. And now, O Muses, dwellers in the mansions of Olympus, tell me, for you are goddesses and are in all places, so that you are all-seeing, while we know nothing but by reports. Who were the chiefs and princes of the Danaans? As for the common soldiers, they were so many that I could not name every single one of them, though I had 10 tongues. And though my voice failed not, and my heart were of bronze within me, unless you, O Olympian Muses, daughters of Aegis-bearing Zeus, were to recount them to me. Nevertheless, I will tell the captains of the ships, and all the fleets together. Peneleos, Letus, Arcelios, Protheanor, and Clonius were captains of the Boeotians. These were they that dwelt in Heria, the rocky Alis, and who were held Chionas Scolus, in the highlands of Eteonas, with Thespia, Craea, in the fair city of Mycalessus. They also had Harma, Ilseum, and Erythrea, and they had Elion, Hyle, and Petion, Achalia, and the strong fortress of Medion, Copae, Eretresis, and Thisbe, the haunt of doves, Coronia, and the pastoress of Helioratus, Plateau, and Glisses, the fortress of Thebes the less, holy Onchestus, with its famous grove of Neptune, Arn, rich in vineyards, Medea, and sacred Nyssa, and Enthedon upon the sea. From these there came 50 ships, and in each there were 120 young men of the Boeotians. Ascalaphus and Ilmenius, sons of Ares, led the people that dwelt in Aspledon and Archemenius, the realm of the Menaeans. Astyoch, a noble maiden, bore them in the house of Actor, son of Asius, for she had gone with Ares secretly into an upper chamber, and he had lain with her. With these there came 30 ships. The Phocians were led by Schedius and Epistrophus, sons of mighty Iphitus, and the son of Nobolus. These were they that held Cypressus, rocky Pythos, holy Crissa, Diulis, and Panopeus. They also that dwelt in Anemoria and Hyampolis, and about the waters of the river Cephissus and Lilia by the springs of Cephissus. With their chieftains came 40 ships, and they marshaled the forces of the Phocians, which were stationed next to the Boeotians on their left. Ajax, the fleet son of Oileus, commanded the Locrians. He was not so great, nor nearly so great as Ajax, the son of Telamon. He was a little man, and his breastplate was made of linen. But in the use of the spear he excelled all the Hellenes and the Achaeans. These dwelt in Sinus, Opous, Calliarus, Bessa, Scarf, fair Eugia, Tarf, and Thronium, about the river Bogris. With him there came 40 ships of the Locrians, who dwell beyond Eubea. The fierce Abantus held Eubea with its cities, Chalcis, Eretia, and Histia, rich in vines, Cerinthus upon the sea, and the rock-perched town of Dium. And with them were also the men of Charistus and Straea. Elephenor of the race of Ares was in command of these. He was son of Chalcedon, and chief over all Abantus. With him they came, fleet of foot and wearing their hair long behind, brave warriors who would ever strive to tear open the corselets of their foes with their long ashen spears. Of these there were 50 ships. And they that held the strong city of Athens, the people of great Eurystheus, who was born of the soil itself, but Zeus's daughter Athena fostered him, and established him at Athens in her own rich sanctuary. There, year by year, the Athenians' youth worshipped him with sacrifices of bulls and rams. These were commanded by Menethus, son of Petos. No man living could equal him in the marshalling of chariots and foot soldiers. Nestor could alone rival him, for he was older. With him there came 50 ships. Ajax brought 12 ships from Salamis, and stationed them alongside those of the Athenians. The men of Argus again, and those who held the walls of Tyrrhenes, with Hermione and Essine upon the gulf, Trozian, Ionoe, and the vineyard lands of Epidaurus, and the Achaeans' youth, moreover, who came from Aegina and Masus. These were led by Diomed of the loud battle cry, and Sithinilos, son of famed Capinius. With them in command was Euryalus, son of King Macestus, son of Talius. But Diomed was chief over them all. With these there came 80 ships. Those who held the strong city of Mycenae, rich Corinth and Cleonae, Orinae, Arethrae, and Sicyon, where Adrestus reigned of old, Hypersia, Hygonacia, and Pelene, Aegium, and all the coastland round about Hellas. These sent 100 ships under the command of King Agamemnon, son of Atreus. His force was far both finest and most numerous, and in their midst was the king himself, all glorious in his armor of gleaming bronze, foremost among the heroes, for he was the greatest king, and had most men under him. And those that dwelt in Lacedaemon, lying low among the hills, Pharis, Sparta, with Mies, the haunt of doves, Brysae, Augae, Amyclae, and Helos upon the sea, Laias moreover, and Otilas. These were led by Menelaus, of the loud battle cry, brother to Agamemnon, and of them there were 60 ships, drawn up apart from the others. Among them went Menelaus himself, strong with zeal, urging his men to fight, for he longed to avenge the toil and sorrow that he had suffered for the sake of Helen. The men of Pylos and Arene and Therium were is the ford of the river Alpheus, strong Api, Cyparissus, and Iphigenia, Pteleum, Helios, and Dorium, where the Muses set, Thamyris, and still his ministerial forever. He was returning from Achalia, where Eurytus lived and reigned, and boasted that he would surpass even the Muses, daughters of Aegis-bearing Zeus, if they should sing against him, whereon they were angry and maimed him. They robbed him of his divine power over song, and thenceforth he could strike the lyre no more. These were commanded by Nestor, the knight of Gerin, and with him there came 90 ships. And those that held Arcadia, under the high mountain of Kyllon, near the tomb of Apetus, where the people fight hand to hand, the men of Phineus also, and Orchomenus, rich in flocks, of Rippae, Strati, and bleak Inspe, of Tigdia, and fair Mantinia, of Stymphalius, and Parahatia. Of these King Agapenor, son of Achaeus, was commander, and they had 60 ships. Many Arcadians, good soldiers, came in each one of them, but Agamemnon found them the ships in which to cross the sea, for they were not a people that occupied their business upon the waters. The men, moreover, of Buprasium and of Elais, so much of it as is enclosed between Hyrmine, Myrsinus, upon the seashore, the rock Olin, and Alisium. These had 4 leaders, and each of them had 10 ships, with many Epeans on board. Their captains were Amphimachus and Thalpius, the one son of Ctetus, and the other of Eurytus, both of the race of Actor. The 2 others were Dorius, son of Amerinus, and Polyxenus, son of King Agastines, son of Aegeus. And those of Dulichium, with the sacred Icenian islands, who dwelt beyond the sea of Elis. These were led by Meges, peer of Ares, and the son of valiant Phyleus, dear to Zeus, who quarreled with his father, and went to settle in Dulichium. With him there were 40 ships. Odysseus led the grave Cephallenians, who held Ithaca, Neritum with its forests, Crocilia, rugged Agilips, Samos, and Zacynthus, with the mainland also that was over against the islands. These were led by Odysseus, peer of Zeus in council, and with him there were 12 ships. Theos, son of Andremon, commanded the Atelians, who dwelt in Plerion, Olinus, Pylene, Chalcis by the sea, and rocky Chaldeon, for the great King Oeneus had now no sons living, and was himself dead. Was also golden-haired Maleager, who had been set over the Atelians to be their king, and with Theos there came 40 ships. The famous spearman Idomeneus led the Cretans, who held Cnossus and the well-walled city of Gortys, Lyctus also, Miletus, and Lycastus, that lies upon the chalk. The populous towns of Phaestus and Rhytium, with the other people that dwelt in the 100 cities of Crete. All these were led by Idomeneus and by Merions, peer of murderous Ares, and with these there came 80 ships. Tlepolemus, son of Heracles, a man both brave and large of stature, brought 9 ships of lordly warriors from Rhodes. These dwelt in Rhodes, which is divided among the 3 cities of Lindus, Iolcus, and Camerius, that lies upon the chalk. These were commanded by Tlepolemus, son of Heracles, by Astyochus, whom he had carried off from Ephyria on the river Cilius, after sacking many cities of valiant warriors. Then Tlepolemus grew up. He killed his father's uncle Lysimachus, who had been a famous warrior in his time, but was then grown old. On this he built himself a fleet, gathered a great following, and fled beyond the sea, for he was menaced by the other sons and grandsons of Heracles. After a voyage, during which he suffered great hardships, he came to Rhodes, where the people divided into 3 communities according to their tribes, and were dearly loved by Zeus, the lord of the gods and men. Wherefore the son of Cronos showered down great riches upon them. And Nereus brought 3 ships from Syme. Nereus, who was the handsomest man that came up under Ilium of all the Danaans after the son of Peleus, but he was a man of no substance, and had but a small following. And those that held Nicerius, Crepethus, and Casus, with Cos, the city of Eryphlius, and the Chaldeans islands. These were commanded by Pheidippus and Antiphus, 2 sons of King Thessalus, the son of Heracles, and with them there came 30 ships. Those again who held Pelasgic Argos, Alos, Alope, and Trachis, and those of Pythia and Hellas, the land of fair women, who were called Myrmidons, Hellenes, and Archaeans. These had 50 ships, over which Achilles was in command. But they now took no part in the war, inasmuch as there was no one to marshal them. For Achilles stayed by his ships, furious about the loss of the girl Briseis, whom he had taken from Lyrnessus at his own great peril. When he had sacked Lyrnessus and Thebe, and had overthrown Minos and Epistrophus, sons of King Evenor, son of Seleucus. For her sake Achilles was still grievous, but ere long he was again to join them. And those that held Phylace, in the flowery meadows of Pyrasus, sanctuary of Demeter, Iton, mother of sheep, Antrim upon the sea, and Pteleum, that lies upon the grasslands. Of these brave Protesilaus had been captain while he was yet alive, but he was now lying under the earth. He had left a wife behind him in Phylace to tear her cheeks in sorrow, and his house was only half finished, for he was slain by a Dardanian warrior while leaping foremost of the Achaeans upon the soil of Troy. Still, though his people mourned their chieftain, they were not without a leader, for Podarches of the race of Ares marshaled them. He was son of Iphiclus, rich in sheep, who was the son of Phylacus, and he was own brother to Protesilaus, only younger, Protesilaus being at once the elder and the more valiant. So the people were not without a leader, though they mourned him whom they had lost. With him there came 40 ships. And those that held Perea by the Bobine lake, with Bobi, Glaphyrae, and the populous city of Iolcus. These were their 11 ships, were led by Emilius, son of Admetus, whom Alcestis bore to him loveliest of the daughters of Peleus, and those that held Menthone and Themacia, with Melibeo and rugged Olizone. These were led by the skillful archer Philoctetus, and they had 7 ships, each with 50 oarsmen, all of them good archers. But Philoctetus was lying in great pain in the island of Lemnos, where the sons of the Achaeans left him, for he had been bitten by a poisonous water snake. There he lay sick and sorry, and full soon did the Argives give to miss him. But his people, though he felt his loss, they're not leaderless, for Medon, the bastard son of Oileus by Rene, set them in array. Those again of Tricca in the stony region of Ithom, and they that held Ochelia in the city of Ochelion, Eurytus. These were commanded by the 2 sons of Asclepius, skilled in the art of healing, Podalirius and Machaon, and with them there were 30 ships. The men, moreover, of Ormenius, and by the fountain of Hyperia, with those that held Asterius and the white crest of Titanus. These were led by Irecleus, the son of Agamemnon. With them there came 40 ships. Those that held Agrissa and Gyrtome, Orthe, Elon, and the white city of Aluson, of these brave Polypotis was leader. He was son of Pirithous, who was son of Zeus himself, for Hippodamia bore him to Pirithous on the day when he took his revenge on the shaggy mountain savages, and drove them from Mount Pelion to the Aethys. But Polypotis was not sole in command, for with him was Leonotis, of the race of Ares, who was son of Coronis, the son of Caenus, and with these there came 40 ships. Guneon brought 22 ships from Cyphus, and he was followed by the Aenians and the valiant Peribi, who dwelt about wintry Dodona, and held the lands round the lovely river Titaresius, which sends its waters into Peneus. They do not mingle with the silver eddies of the Peneus, but flow on top of them like oil, for the Titaresius is a branch of dread Orcus, and of the river Styx. Of the Magnetus, Prothous, son of Tenthredon, was commander. There they were that dwelt about the river Peneus and Mont Pelion. Prothous, fleet of foot, was their leader, and with him there came 40 ships. Such were the chiefs and princes of the Danaans, who then, O Muse, was the foremost, whether man or horse, among those that followed after the sons of Atreus. Of the horses, those of the son of Phares were by far the finest. They were driven by Emilius, and were as fleet as birds. They were of the same age and color, and perfectly matched in height. Apollo of the silver bow had bred them in Perea, both of them mares, and terrible as Ares in battle. Of the men, Ajax, son of Telamon, was much the foremost, so long as Achilles' anger lasted. For Achilles excelled him greatly, and he had also better horses. But Achilles was now holding aloof at his ships, by reason of his quarrel with Agamemnon, and his people passed their time upon the seashore, throwing dicks and aiming their spears at a mark, and in archery. Their horses stood each other by his own chariot, champing lotus and wild celery. The chariots were housed under cover, but their owners, for lack of leadership, wandered hither and thither about the host, and went not forth to fight. Thus marched the host like a consuming fire, and the earth groaned beneath them, as when the Lord of thunder is angry and lashes the land about Typhos among the Arimi, where they say, Typhos lies. Even so did the earth groan beneath them as they sped over the plain. And now Iris, fleet as the wind, was sent by Zeus to tell the bad news among the Trojans. They were gathered in assembly, old and young, at Priam's gates, and Iris came close up to Priam, speaking with the voice of Priam's son Polites, who, being fleet of foot, was stationed as watchman for the Trojans on the tomb of old Aesyetes, to look out for any sally of the Achaeans. In his likeness Iris spoke, saying, Old man, you talk idly, as in time of peace, while war is at hand. I have been in many a battle, but never yet saw such a host as is now advancing. They are crossing the plain to attack the city as thick as leaves, or as the sands of the sea. Hector, I charge you above all others, do as I say. There are many allies dispersed about the city of Priam from distant places, speaking diverse tongues. Therefore, let each chief give orders to his own people, setting them severally in array and leading them far into battle. Thus she spoke, but Hector knew that it was the goddess, and at once broke up the assembly. The men flew to arms, all the gates were opened, and the people thronged through them, horse and foot, with the tramp as of a great multitude. Now there is a high mound before the city, rising by itself upon the plain. Men call it Batia, but the gods know that it is the tomb of lithe Murine, where the Trojans and their allies divided their forces. Priam's son, great Hector of the gleaming helmet, commanded the Trojans, and with him were arrayed by far the greater number and most valiant of those who were longing for the fray. The Dardanians were led by brave Aeneas, whom Aphrodite bore to Anchises, when she, goddess though she was, had lain with him upon the mountain slopes of Ida. He was not alone, for with him were the two sons of Antenor, Archilochus and Acamas, both skilled in all the arts of war. They that dwelt in Zelia, under the lowest spurs of Mount Ida, men of substance, who drink the limpid waters of the Aspius, and are the Trojan blood. These were led by Pandarus, son of Lycaon, whom Apollo had taught to use the bow. They that held Andrestia in the land of Apaesus, with Pittia in the high mountain of Teria. These were led by Andrestus and Amphius, whose breastplate was of linen. These were the sons of Merop of Percote, who excelled in all kinds of divination. He told them not to take part in the war, but they gave him no heed, for fate lured them to destruction. They that dwelt about Percote and Practius, with Sestos, Abydos, and Eresby, these were led by Asius, son of Heractacus, a brave commander. Asius, the son of Heractacus, whom his powerful dark bay steeds, of the breed that comes from the river Celeus, had brought from Eresby. Hippothos led the tribes of Pelasgian spearsmen, who dwelt in fertile Larceus, Hipposoth and Palios of the race of Ares, two sons of the Pelasgian Lathus, son of Tatenmus. Achaemus and the warrior Kyrios commanded the Thracians and those that came from beyond the mighty stream of the Hellespont. Ephemus, son of Traizenos, the son of Chaos, was captain of the Siconian spearsmen. Hyracmus led the Paeonians archers from distant Amydon by the broad waters of the river Axus, the fairest that flow upon the earth. The Agamemnonians were commanded by stout-hearted Pylaemenes from Enete, where the mules run wild in herds. These were they that held Kytortus, the country round Sesamus, with the cities by the river Parthenius, Cormna, Agilius, and lofty Erythene. Odius and Epistrophus were captains over the Halizoni from distant Alibi, where there are mines of silver. Chromis and Nemos, the augur, led the Mysians, but his skill in augury availed not to save him from destruction, for he fell by the hand of the fleet descendants of Achaeus in the river, where he slew others also of the Trojans. Phorcys, again, and noble Ascanius led the Phrygians from the far country of Ascania, and both were eager for the fray. Mesthles and Antiphus commanded the Meonians, sons of Telemenes, born to him by the Gigaic lake. These led the Manaeans, who dwelt under Mount Tmolus. Nastus led the Carians, men of strange speech. These held Miletus and the wooded mountain of Prithyrus, with the water of the river Meander and the lofty crests of Mount Michael. These were commanded by Nastus and Amphimachus, the brave son of Nomion. He came into the fight with gold about him, like a girl. Foul that he was, his gold was of no avail to save him, for he fell in the river by the hand of the fleet descendants of Aeacus, and Achilles bore away his gold. Sarpedon and Glaucus led the Lycians from their distant land by the eddying rivers of the Xanthus. That brings us to the end of Book 2 of the Iliad, to the end, hopefully, of all the lists of who's involved, and the introduction into the action of the actual story. Apologies for my butchering of the Greek. Same with the French. I just don't speak the language. I should definitely figure that out. But hopefully, in this reading, I will get better. Thus is the point, to learn and grow. Go ahead and please leave us a like and a subscription. Hit that notification bell to make sure you're being notified at any time we release a new video. And if you got any helpful tips or just comments, discussion points, be sure to leave them in the comment section. We'll be sure to touch on them before our next video. Until then.